Well, it's horrifying. Of course,
Yeah.
it's horrifying. What they're effectively saying is they cannot keep people safe in Birmingham. That's the bottom line. They're saying that this atmosphere is so febrile that if fans from Israel come to Birmingham, then neither the police nor the local authority can keep them
And
safe.
I mean, you're a military
Horrifying.
expert at crowd control, aren't you? I've seen interviews with you talking about the food queues in Gaza and stuff like that. Could it be secured, this match, if their heart was in it?
Yeah, I mean, I was in Rotterdam with the Villa last week.
Oh, right.
And there was a fan area for Villa fans.
Yeah.
We had to take one of two trains to the stadium. We were completely isolated from any contact with the locals. We were queuing beforehand, queuing afterwards. It wasn't a great fan experience, but it kept us safe and it kept the locals safe, and it was absolutely doable. So the fact that they've just gone, nope, can't do it, off the back of, let us remember, a pogrom in Amsterdam, which they tried to blame on Maccabi Tel Aviv fans, but the court transcripts showed afterwards that this was a premeditated attack on Jews. This is a shameful decision by the security advisor groups.
Andy, first of all, I can't believe it's you. You're an old drinking buddy of mine, but let's move on from that.
It's been
When
like,
your
what,
face
25
came
years?
on-
It's crazy stuff.
That was a bad night in that club. Okay, anyway, what I was going to say to you is this. There's something that we pondered before you came on, which is this. There are two reasons why the police might say this is impossible. It could be that they genuinely lack the resource and genuinely are afraid that they would be defeated by what we're calling a jihadi gang. The other thing is that actually they're just not very keen on upsetting that group of people.
Yeah, they're
And
also
whilst they
infiltrated like every single institution.
Yeah, so whilst they could actually stop them, actually the footage wouldn't be that great and it's easier to kick in the Jews. Now, I imagine you don't know the nature of the threat that these people have posed, but what is your instinct about which of those the police have gone for?
Well, actually, I spoke about this tonight to a senior police commander who often does West Ham, so they know all about how security at football games work. And the fact is, there will be intelligence that we're not privy to. There will be, challenges around the streets of Aston. This is a traditional Victorian football ground. It's surrounded by terraced houses, loads of interlocking streets. Very, very difficult to lock down from a, public order perspective, which I can talk in detailed ways about as a former military public order commander.
Yeah, we'd like that.
It is a policing challenge. It is a public order challenge. But the simple fact is that are we upholding a principle or are we just choosing the easy option? And
we are. Well, Andy,
the principle should be that if you want to go to a football match in Birmingham, you can go
without fear or favour. Is the vow of the police.
Andy, I would suggest we are upholding a principle, and that principle is that when Islam says no, the country kneels down and accepts it.
Yeah, and that's incredibly concerning. That's incredibly
concerning.
What sort of a future are we creating with this kind of decision? Yeah.
But what would you talk about a fan zone. If there was a fan zone there, how would that work? Because this wasn't just about Villa. In fact, I don't think it was Villa fans. It was people from the local area. It's a very changed area that would come. And if you had a baying mob around, would you have to shut down the streets a mile away? Is that how would you, on a security basis, do this? Because that's part of your expertise.
Look, the really sensible way to do it is this. Look, Aston Villa are massive. We've been in Europe for 2 seasons running. We've been away to a variety of cities around Europe. Our fans do drink heavily. There are often some policing concerns about that. But that hasn't ever stopped the local police from, creating a security bubble for Aston Villa fans, taking us to the ground in protected vehicles or protected convoys or protected trains, whatever it is, keeping us in the ground until many hours after the match is finished and then bussing us out again. This is just how it works in every away city in the world, unless you are a Jewish Maccabi Tel Aviv fan, in which case the game is shut down.
But is there a difference?
That's the killer difference.
Because obviously football violence is very violent, but it doesn't include explosions, guns, maybe machine. Would they be worried about a terrorist attack? And do you think this has been G'd up by this imam in Birmingham and this MP from Perry Bar in Birmingham, who've basically said, they shouldn't be coming, and if they do come, you shouldn't have any mercy on them?
Andy, I do want you to answer that, but I just want to add in to everything that Ash has said. What about this word unrest rather than fear of violence, fear of protest? Do we take the unrest is what Ash is talking about, a far more serious and perhaps city-wide campaign.
Maybe like, as David Betts said, this is a sort of beginnings of civil wars where you have different groups opposing each other.
Of course, potentially. I've not, pardon me, I've not seen the evidence. I'm not going to speculate on what the threat might be. But my goodness, in the last 2 weeks, we've seen an attack on a synagogue in Manchester where 2 people tragically lost their lives and a third not person was killed by the police, who was the perpetrator. The bottom line here is, do we want a country where people can attend sporting events and enjoy them in peace, protected by those agents of the state who are appointed to enforce that peace? At the moment, what the message coming out of Birmingham is that the people that we appoint and pay with our taxes to protect the peace and law and order of this country cannot cope with the fact that there might be Israelis coming into a heavily Muslim area. And that, I would suggest, is the core of the problem. It is a massive issue.
It sets a precedent, doesn't it? And also, you know, we saw with the Batley school teacher, we've seen at Parliament, you're giving in and you're giving them more elbow room to do more, basically, cause more troubles and more sectarian violence.
Isn't Ayub Khan's central message, Birmingham is Islamic territory and you will behave according to our religion or you will be schooled over it. If the chief constable comes down with the Jewish fans, the chief constable will have his head kicked in. Because this is a Muslim area, this is Muslim land, this is Muslim territory, and Islamic rules will apply here. And if you don't like that, then we're going to beat it into you.
Yeah, and look, the MP we're talking about was elected on a Gaza ticket. This is a Gaza MP. He's not the MP who's looking after the interests of the good people of Birmingham and Perry Barr. He's an MP who was elected specifically on the back of the worldwide Hamas disinformation campaign about the Gaza genocide hoax. You know, so that's the febrile atmosphere that we're trying to bring, you know, Israeli football fans into. And if we can't protect them off the basis of that horrific disinformation campaign, then we have absolutely failed the very basic functions of what it means to run a civilised country.
And a lot of Villa fans are saying they will wear a Star of David t-shirt, even a Maccabi Tel Aviv shirt, or they may even give their seat up if there's any Tel Aviv fans there. What are you going to do? I've seen that you've tweeted you're going to wear a Star of David t-shirt.
Well, I'm going with Josh Howie, GB News presenter. He's going to wear his Star of David. I'm not Jewish, so it would be inappropriate for me.
It would take too long to convert you by the time of the fixture. Also, it takes a little snip as well.
I understand it can be painful.
But what I am going to do is wear my Aston Villa shirt and stand very proudly next to my fellow British Jews and my fellow.
I think there was a Jewish founder actually.
I'm going to hand you over to Pete in a second, but Andy, where does Aston Villa go now? Because I know this sounds extreme, but it would be my view that this is the end of Villa Park, or if I was Aston Villa, because I would say
no, you can't end Villa Park.
No, but I would turn around and say, look, at the end of the day, if we no longer have the whip hand over our own stadium, then serious questions have to be asked. I don't know why Aston Villa don't say, no, I'm sorry, we're rejecting the police's plan. Yeah. We're opening up the away stand.
Would they be allowed to overrule the police, the club? They wouldn't.
No, they wouldn't. There are appeal routes they could go down, but they have no power to just overrule and chin off the police. So that's not really an option. Look, this is not Aston Villa's fault. Aston Villa have not weighed into this in any way, shape or form. Frankly, I prefer them to come out and say that they oppose the decision, but I understand why they haven't. Look, this is not an Aston Villa issue. This is Andre. This is not an Aston Villa issue. This is a British society issue. Yeah, exactly.
I suppose
which is why it's an issue for all of us, not just Villa fans.
I suppose what Aston Villa would say, in fairness, and if I was the chairman of Aston Villa, I would say, well, look, I can express my own personal views, but it's not for me to support or oppose the decision. There is a proper process of working out what is safe and what is not safe in the ground, and therefore I support there being a proper process, and I oppose there not being. You see what I mean?
Yeah, but the key thing here is that actually Keir Starmer, to his credit, I don't give him much credit, but there is some credit here. He's come out against this, which hopefully means that he will direct that the correct policing support is given to West Midlands Police to uplift them in numbers to make sure they have the cops on the ground who can secure this, which means that Maccabi Tel Aviv fans can come and enjoy this football game along with the rest of us.
Starmer's condemned it and Badenoch has condemned it. Pete, what did you want to say on that, mate? We've got Pete Barnes here as well.
Hi, Andy. I just wanted to ask you mentioned about the Hamas disinformation campaign, and I don't think this gets anywhere near the amount of attention that it deserves in terms of its effectiveness. Well, obviously, we've got the big China influence. Can you talk to us a little bit about how foreign money has been poured into a lot of these campaigns, and actually how what we're seeing on the streets is actually not is being influenced by foreign actors
and paid for
by it, because this is a real big moment in our politics, and I really feel that we have to understand that this is not an accident. This is not kind of laziness on the part of the British side. This has been deliberately done to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're crossing from my football support to my day job.
Yes.
Where I have studied this campaign in detail for 2 years. I'm writing my PhD on the Gaza campaign. I have a master's in psychology focusing on disinformation. And what we have seen over the last 2 years is the most incredible state-backed disinformation campaign coming out of Gaza, primarily Qatar, but backed up by bots from Moscow, from Tehran, from Islamabad in Pakistan, who have been artificially boosting this narrative of Israeli war crimes and Israeli horrors in Gaza. Look, Gaza is actually the least casualty-intensive war of the 21st century, believe it or not. Every other war outstrips the number of deaths in Gaza.
It's being studied, isn't it, in urban warfare studies to show to see how you can keep the innocent people death toll so low.
But
Correct.
Andy,
Well, yeah, Andrew, go for it.
Yeah, Andy, what frustrates me is this. Right, I'm going to come straight out with it. Look, at the end of the day, isn't the central problem here that there are lumps of Birmingham, and it's not exclusively Birmingham, that are not Britain in any meaningful sense, where they have their own Sharia courts, where they have their own language, where they have their own clothing, where they have their own traditions,
their own rules.
They have their own policing, because we know that they have their own. There's multiple
Birmingham
things.
is a forerunner to a place near you.
In reality, Birmingham, or at least parts of it, is what David Starkey calls a tribal area. That is to say that it's much more similar to places perhaps in South Africa, where they have areas that are ruled by the Zulus, than it is perhaps of the United Kingdom. And the reality is, forget Aston Villa, forget Tel Aviv, forget Andy Fox and all of these things and all of these supporters. Isn't the real problem here that there is an ability of the MP for Perry-Barr to make parts of Birmingham extremely hostile to British subjects, to the British authorities, to the British police?
Yeah, well, look, there's a wider question here, is that when you say this isn't British, what we've been terrible at in recent years is defining what that even means. Yes. You know, we've talked
you're
about...
told you're racist if you try and define it.
Yeah, we've been told that flying the British flag is racist. We've been told that diversity is our strength. We've been told all of these things. And when you can't tell your own story, somebody else will tell it for you. Correct. And you won't like how that story ends. And that's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I'd just say this kind of ties back into the kind of the influence of China, the influence of Iran in our kind of academic institutions that have allowed this to kind of permeate through society. You know, these narratives aren't accidents. Again, it's all been deliberately. It's interesting why Britain has been targeted.
It's amazing, Pete. It's amazing, Pete. And perhaps Andy can comment on this, but it's amazing, Pete. If what you're saying is correct, and I'm sure it is, and what Andy's saying is correct, and I'm sure that is as well, in reality, the Hamas information service, the Hamas news service, has more penetration within this part of the United Kingdom than the BBC or Talk or The Sun or The Times have. And in reality, this is a global brotherhood of Islamic nations that happens to be hosted in the former territory of the United Kingdom.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that actually I think a lot of it has really been coming from kind of celebrities and the kind of the cultural aspects. If you look at people like Gary Lineker, you know, the kind of the normalization of narratives, I think, is a really important thing. It's not extreme to start sharing or start having anti-Semitic opinions. They've kind of, in a way, not like kind of made it not acceptable, but not as horrific in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think they've kind of muddied the waters and they made it more complicated than they needed. This academic.
Do you know what? If I stood up, I suspect if I stood up in this community, running for council with a megaphone, going, "If you vote for me, I'll throw all the Jews out," it wouldn't be a vote loser.
Andrew, we've got to go. Just quickly, we've got to go to a break. Are you an optimist or a pessimist about what's going on in the UK with all this carrying on? Will there be a reversal in it, or...?
Pessimist broadly, but I think this is a moment. This is a seizable moment where we can actually turn this on its head. If the institutions of state, if the government, if the police are given the support they need, you know, we can actually take this horrific decision, turn it into something positive.